All
I'm
right.
trying to live through my first term here.
Good evening, everyone. Let's call to order the March 6th meeting of the District Advisory Board. And we are going to start by approval of the agenda for this evening's meeting. So I have I'm gonna fumble here. I have a motion by Mike and a second by Jerry. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. And then I'll call for the approval of the minutes for February 7th, 2024.
Second.
So I have a motion by Michael and a second by Geneva. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then we will move on to our Wichita Fire Department.
Captain Cox, Wichita Fire Department. We're at Station 22, hydraulic and Wassel there. I see you guys have this report. I'll just kind of go over some of the highlights of it. And again, if you guys have any questions, maybe I can answer them, maybe not. The reporting for this period is January 20th to February 20th. So whenever they release the information, it's usually a month behind. Biggest thing that we're going to talk about, reminder next weekend, next Saturday, this coming Saturday is daylight savings time. We always remind everybody that's a great time to change out your smoke detector batteries. January 27th, we actually unfortunately had a fatality fire, which is one of the discussion points of 2100 South Victoria. There was a 71-year-old male that we pulled out of the house, but unfortunately he died later in the hospital. As far as I know, that's still under investigation. That's been our second fatality fire for 2020. Something I'll talk about, there still continues to be a problem, which you guys are probably just as familiar as us with vacant structures that are burning. We still have an ongoing problem with that, with squatters taking over residents, either warming fires, cooking fires, to get out of hand. And for us, it becomes more of a problem. We usually have multiple fires in those same structures. So then it becomes a lot bigger safety concern for us. We're going there multiple times. Final thing I'll talk about, which again, it was all over the news earlier in the month at 3501 South Washington, we responded to came out as a trash fire, a brush fire. It was in the park, and that's where the Jackie Robinson statue was found. He was in a trash can, and they attempted to light it on fire. The only reason we responded was there was a couple of city workers that were there to trim trees. They saw the trash dumpster on fire and called 911. That's kind of how that whole ball got in motion. Again, that's just kind of the highlights in here with this report. Are there any questions you guys have for me?
I have one, and you may or may not be able to answer it. But what is taking so long with the railroad tracks there at Hydraulic and Pawnee? Because that looks like a straight shot for you guys to be able to fire.
You know, we just talked about that today. We were driving by and from our standpoint, it looks like it's ready to open up. I don't have any answers to that. I would hope that pretty soon it's going to open up.
I thought maybe they'd keep you in the loop, you know, about what. All right, thank you.
Right now we do have to turn on to Pawnee to Southeast Boulevard and then go up. So it does delay us slightly when we're responding to that area. Again, hopefully soon it's going to open up. I don't have that.
All right, not your,
I wish I did.
yeah, it's not really your area of expertise, but it seems like every time I come to a meeting, it's still barricaded. I think it's going on the third month.
I don't have an answer to that.
Any other questions from the DAB? Question from the public? All right, seeing none. Do you gentlemen want to report as well, or are you just here for moral support?
We probably don't want to.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. I appreciate it. All right, we have Wichita PD. One with us virtually.
Good evening. I'm Detective Phillips, working out of Patrol South right now. Officer Jensen asked me to fill in for him tonight. So what I'd like to go over real quick is just some of the crime trends that we're seeing right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk about what we've seen so far this year compared to last year at this time. So I'll start off with our part one, persons crimes. So looking at the rape calls, that's actually down 29% so far this year compared to last year. Our robberies, which includes our business robberies as well as our person robberies, which would include our highway robberies, that would be considered a person's robbery. That's down about 22% so far this year, which is really good. Our ag assaults, down 9%. So when we look at all of our persons crimes, part one persons crimes as a whole, it's down 12% citywide. So we're trending down in that area. The next part one is what we call our property crimes. That would be our burglaries and our larcenies and our auto thefts. Our burglaries as a whole are down 16%. Our larcenies about even. They're only up 2%, so level there. And then our auto thefts, we're seeing a 37% increase. And the reason for that is because we're still seeing a lot of thefts to our Kias and our Hyundais. So if you have a Kia or a Hyundai or know of anybody that is, just, do yourself a favor and be aware that our thieves right now are targeting those vehicles because of how they're able to manipulate the starting sequence in the steering column. So that's actually a design flaw from the manufacturers. And I know that in the past, we've had partnerships with some of the local dealers and mechanics that can actually change those out for you. But we do have some suspects in mind. So we're actively trying to locate these suspects and hopefully get a stop to these thefts that are happening in the area. There was also one other thing that I wanted to cover. I know that Jensen mentioned there was a question that was asked about the current academy. I can tell you that we started the new academy back in January. We had 35 recruits that started that process. They are in the 7th week, so they're well on their way. And out of that 35 that started, 8 of those were female recruits. So it's a fairly large class, a lot larger than what we're used to having, usually averaging anywhere between 20 and 25. So this is very encouraging that we're starting to see our numbers go up with people that are interested in becoming law enforcement officers for the city. That's all that I have to cover tonight. Were there any questions for me?
Any questions? Yes.
You said that the crime rate is down on theft, but I've had a friend that's had a storage shed in this area broke into twice since January, and the response time was over 3 hours. Could people just not be reporting them because of the response time?
No, it still needs to be reported. When you call in a 911 to report a crime, it basically goes into our priority system. If it's a burglary that's already happened, it's basically going to be a report call at that time. And then what would happen is an officer would just be dispatched when there's one available. And I can tell you that if there's an officer that's on his way to take the report and another high priority call comes out, such as a domestic violence or some other type of violent crime, the officer is going to be diverted to that type of call. And it's like that citywide. That's just the policies that we have in place and the policy that the dispatchers in Sedgwick County have in place as well.
City is a name.
Other questions from the dad?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Do you have any idea where they're dumping cars at, the Hondas or stealing? Is there any particular place they're leaving them?
Yeah, so a lot of them are being dumped on South Side. One of the hot spots that we're seeing is 4141 South Seneca, which is an apartment complex. So we've been working with the property owners out there to kind of help us out with that. But other than that, I mean, there's really no reason why they're dumping there, other than maybe there might be a suspect that lives there. But typically, a suspect's not going to dump stolen property where they're residing. It's probably just because it's a dark area at night and it's a huge complex. So they're just using that as basically it's an opportunity for them.
Occasionally they come to my neighbor's house.
Give it Hilltop Manor too.
Any other questions from the dad?
You said that, how many females were in this last class?
7.
7, okay,
7
good.
females.
So I have a question. I'm curious, have the shootings across the city slowed down any? And do you have any idea where we're at with shootings this year compared to where we were last year?
Yeah, the only thing that I've got on my reports is what our homicide rate is, and I can tell you that our homicides are up 80% compared to last year, and that's just because that several of our homicides have had multiple victims per one suspect, so it's making our number look high. We've had, I believe we've had 10 for the year so far, which is high, but again, that's because a lot of our scenes have had multiple victims. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers for just specific shootings. It's not broken down that way for me, so I'm sorry, I can't tell you the exact numbers.
That's okay. I knew I was catching you off guard asking that question. I'm curious about it. Do you have a question?
I do have a question. I know that gun violence regarding youth has been pretty high lately, and I was wondering if the Wichita Police Department has been doing anything new or in particular to address that.
So the department does have a juvenile intervention unit, and I'm not sure. I don't know a whole lot of information about that, and I honestly don't know what kind of programs they have for the youth or what they're doing to actively engage this type of problem. I think our public information officer would be able to tell you probably more about that because I do believe that they do work in the same office. So it's worth reaching out to them about that. But yeah, it's not something that I do a whole lot of work with. So honestly, I don't have a whole lot of information, unfortunately.
Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, and we appreciate everything that you do. Stay safe out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cindy, I have Patrol East's written updates.
Oh, okay.
So construction on the new Patrol East station is scheduled to be completed on May 6th. Patrol East Community Policing is partnering with local businesses to combat the recent uptick in retail theft. And the ECPs will be attending Egg the Park, an Easter event at Edgemore Park on March 23rd from 10 to 1, and Egg Stream, Plainview Park, also on March 23rd from 1 to 3. We want to remind everybody that with warmer weather, please keep your valuables put away as theft numbers are on the rise. You can ask me questions, but I will not have an answer.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We don't have any dates yet, maybe Mike would know. We don't have any dates yet for cleanup on the south end, Broadway. What's it called?
Russia Broadway.
Russia Broadway.
The neighboring movement does not want to do Russia Broadway this year. So
Oh,
they are doing their normal neighborhood cleanups instead.
okay, so no brush up Broadway. Okay. All right. We will move on to the Wichita Public Library. I just have to say, I'm so excited about the mobile book.
I know, I love it. I think that I have something in here about that too. All right, so I am Robin from the Wichita Public Library, the Walters branch. First thing I want to talk about is our Academy Award Short Film Festival. It started on the 2nd and it'll go till the 9th. So this upcoming Saturday will be the last day at the Advanced Learning Library to see the whole slew of live action, animated, and documentary categories. And that there's more information at wichitalibrary.org/Academy Awards if you need it. Again, the NEA Big Read Wichita kicks off on March 16th, and that's 2 to 4 at the Advanced Learning Library. We're reading There by Tommy Orange, and it's a book about systemic violence and intergenerational trauma in Native American communities. Patterns of change and circumstance draw each other towards the first big Oakland powwow. We have a packed schedule of programs and events for the 6-week Big Read program. More information about that is at bigreadwichita.org. And beginning March 4th, so just a couple days ago, the library had Tony boxes available as its newest offering, the Library of Things. They're music and storytelling devices for young kids. They're like small radios. They provide screen-free listening, and each Tony's bundle comes with a box, a bunch of characters, and a charger. To use the Tony's, simply place the character on top of the box and it begins to play songs and stories. More information available at wichitalibrary.org/things. And then here's our book bus plug. It has new weekly stops, including the Dillons at Herring Webb, Orchard Park, the Northwest YMCA, and many more. It has our schedule at wichitalibrary.org/bookbus. And spring break is right around the corner. We're gonna have the whole week full of free programs for both kids and teens. We actually have an all ages program at Walters that I'll talk about here in a moment. Let's see, on March 13th, we're having a tech class on Google Docs at Walters, and that's from 2 to 4:30. Thursday, March 14th, we're having a NASA Eclipse program, and that's where we'll be talking all about the eclipse and giving free pairs of eclipse classes. And on March 27th, we'll be showing Gather, which is a film that follows the stories of natives on the front line of a growing movement to reconnect with spiritual and cultural identities that were devastated by genocide. Afterwards, we will hold a short discussion on how this documentary relates to There by Tommy Orange, our 2024 Big Read selection. And then something that I did not put on here that I recalled was we started our book librarian service at Walters, which is one-on-one technology help and resume help for residents. So if you know of anyone who can benefit from that, have them call me at 316-337-9125, or they can email me at rdowster@wichita.gov. And I can sit down with them for an hour minimum, usually up to 2.5 hours, and help them apply for jobs, help them get to understand their phones, tablets, other technology, all that good stuff. So that's all I have. Yes.
When you do the big read, is it in the budget that you buy so many of these books like this, they're there, so that each library has them, so people want to check them out, or are they required to buy the book themselves and bring it to them?
They have a budget that gets us a bunch of free copies, and they start giving them out at the kickoff event, and then they'll also give any that are left over out at events after that. So at each big read event, they should have at least some copies of the books available for free.
Thank you.
Other questions from the dad?
At those events, can you give donations to help cover the costs of the books?
I am sure you can, if not at the event itself. The Friends of the Library are always accepting donations either through their website or just give them a call and we'll be able to process that for us.
I'll pass it on.
I gave mine at 1KU today, so I have to build back up.
So does the library have audiobooks for checkout?
Yes, we
Yes.
do. We have what are called playaways, which are almost like a Walkman, and you plug directly into them with your headphones, and you can do it that way. We have some books on CD, although we're starting to get less and less of new ones. Just because there's not a dearth of CD players and a lot of cars and things anymore. And then we do have the app called Libby, Libby, that you can download on Apple or Android. You can get free ebooks and free e-audiobooks. I use that a lot to listen to books like long doing chores or long driving, things like that. So it's a really good service.
That's what I need, Libby. Thank you.
Yes.
Questions from the public?
Of course.
Yeah.
You accept donations of books?
Yes, absolutely.
Generally is like, for instance, my wife, for God only knows what reason, before she died, she bought every Bill O'Reilly book that came out for me. And, I've got some books on the Holocaust and stuff like that. That's not objectionable material.
Nope.
Okay.
Any point.
Oh, well now.
If you have a bunch, I would suggest going to the Advanced Learning Library to drop them off. If it's only a few, you can do it.
I may end up doing that. Thank you.
All right.
I'm in a house cleaning mode right now.
Me too.
It could take 2 years.
Christmas decorations.
Do what?
I'll take any Christmas.
No, I've already got, I know where they go. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Not, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, on the public agenda, we have no scheduled items, no scheduled speakers. So on off agenda items, is there anybody from the public that did not request to speak on the public agenda that would like to speak during this time?
Why is everybody looking at me? They're probably gonna talk.
If not, we will move on to new business, agenda item number 6, Wichita zoning notification letters. This is gonna be exciting.
Maybe. Mark it out for later.
Definitely informed. Definitely.
Definitely informative. That's what we're striving for. Okay, well, thanks for having me here. I'm Scott Wadle from the planning department, and I'll step out from behind here one second. Okay, fantastic. Is it okay if well, that's in front of the screen. I guess I am kind of, but I'm
Where makes you most comfortable?
okay.
Very chill.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna cover notification for zoning cases. This has been something of particular interest to DAB members in the past, so we'll talk about the process, where we've been on it. So really, this is an opportunity for you all to provide feedback and opinions. The city council specifically was looking for comments from the DABs, so that's why we're going out to all the DABs for these presentations. In terms of the overview, these are all the things that we'll cover. We're really focused on the letters, but I'll also give you an overview about the other types of notification that take place for zoning cases, just so you're aware of those. So in terms of background, there was a city council workshop on it. We've received comments from members of the public about this, and ultimately the city council said, hey, let's take this out to the DABs and get comments from them on it. In terms of our current practice, in terms of the zoning, this is a real quick overview on it. This works. No. Okay. We'll figure this out. All right, there's a laser in here somehow. Here we go. So an application comes in, it'll go to a DAB and it'll go to the planning commission. The sequence just depends on when that case comes in terms of what day, what week. Then ultimately it'll go to city council. If it gets sent back, we've seen them get back to both the DABs and the planning commission, but ultimately the city council will determine whether it's denied or approved, right? Just a real quick overview zoning process. In terms of public notification, there are a number of different ways. We'll go through all of these, but I just want to highlight that there's the public notice that goes in the newspaper. Yes, we still publish them in the newspaper, and that is required per state statute. There are emails that go out. Those are a practice. They're not required, not a policy. There are yard signs. That is a policy. We'll talk more about the implementation and requirements for that and enforcement. And then there's the letters, which are required by state statute. An additional thing that we have is we have the website. Again, that's a practice, not a policy. There's no requirement to do that. Certainly like to provide that. In terms of the notification letter, it's required by state statute. For city cases, it's a minimum of 200 feet for the notification letter. For county, state statute says 200 feet minimum is what the state requires. They also require for the county 1,000 feet. And it is possible you can have a case that would do both. Sometimes in the unincorporated county or in the city, if it's on the edge, they'll have both county and city. But then for the city of Wichita, a number of years ago adopted a policy that it can vary from 200 to 1,000 feet. We'll talk about what makes that difference. It depends on the number of acres. So for instance, if it's up to 1 acre in size, it goes out 200 feet. If it's over 25, over 25 acres, it goes out 1,000 feet, and then you can see the difference in between. Okay, so different categories. So in terms of the notification letter, it is sent only to property owners. We do send it in the planning department. We will send it to registered HOAs and registered neighborhood associations. The key word there is registered. So with Becca and the other folks who assist the different districts, you've got to get with the city manager's office and get your information, get your HOA and your neighborhood registered, and then we know that you're there, and then GIS will tell us that you're there and we'll send it out to you. So that's how that works. And if president or whatever memberships change, again, they've got to keep that up to date to get it out to the right person. In terms of where the addresses come from, so the applicant for a zoning case is required to purchase a list from a title company. And that's required simply by the application form. So the planning director, that's my role. Planning director establishes what's on the application form per the zoning code, and that's been one of the requirements that's been on there for a number of years. And I think that that's there for a reason, and part of that is to make sure that we get a complete list and that it's a neutral party that's putting that together too, right? So someone that's reputable. So in terms of, there's protest, which is another distance, and there's notification. I want to bring up both of these so that you're aware of them. So the protest area, this is required by state statute, and if enough property owners, if enough owners representing property within this protest area, more than 20% of the properties are protest, then then what it does is it forces the governing body to have a supermajority vote in order to approve the case, the zoning application. So for a city council, that's 6 members. For county commission, that's 4 members, 4 out of 5, 6 out of 7. Now, notification is different. Notification is just, hey, we want to make you aware of this case. Here's where it's going to go. Here's the schedule, those kind of things. So again, 200 feet in the city, 200 feet plus, up to 1,000 feet is by the city. And that is a courtesy that the city has elected to do. They were not forced to. The city council said, we think this is a good thing. But that notification does not change the vote requirements like a protest area does. So do you understand the similarities and the differences? Am I doing okay on that? Okay. Furthermore, to make the point, because I work with maps, I like maps a lot. Here's an actual case that took place. This is the Love's truck stop up at 21st Street and I-135. And in this situation, the notification area was 1,000 feet. Because the acreage was big enough to cause that. But the protest area was only 200 feet, because remember, protest is established by the state, and that's 200 feet. The notification area is something the city's elected to notify further than the 200 feet. So that's how they can be different and have some overlap. Okay, making sense? Question?
The people that were building where the Love's truck stop, the building, did they get a notification as well?
So these.
I was just up there last.
Sure. So this was the subject site was actually 2 parcels because there was a road that split it. So that's what the boundary is developed off of. So everyone else, any other properties that you can see in here would have gotten a notification.
But inside that, there's one that's actually they've actually put up a new building and then Love's is putting up beside it.
Within here,
Uh-huh.
well, they would have been applicants because we require the signatures of all property owners of the applying property. Yeah. And would they have counted, I mean, maybe your question was a different one than I just answered. Would they have counted towards the protest area? No, they would not. So the protest area is everything outside of that that's not right of way. Yeah. And we've got better maps. Maybe I should include one of the protest maps, show how that works out. Good question. Okay, so one of the questions that's coming to you is how far out should notices go? So we checked with other cities in Kansas, and again, it's really kind of a state by state thing because state statutes can be different. So Oklahoma's is different than ours, whatnot. So we looked at in Kansas, and you can see that all of them use the minimum requirement by the state, which is 200 feet. Now we looked a little bit further out and we saw some variance. So Kansas City, Missouri is 300 feet. Oklahoma City, I think there must be something in Oklahoma that requires like a minimum amount of people to be notified because you can see that there's kind of a trend that shows up there. Des Moines, you can see 250 unless it's a cell tower, 250 in West Des Moines. It's kind of funny. They're similar but different. So you can kind of get a sense of like 200, 300, all the way up to 1,000 for Broomfield, Colorado, which is interesting. Furthermore, there was more description that we found on these, so if you're really interested in it, but I think the theme you kind of walk away with here is that there's a little bit of difference in terms of how people do it, but in general, those distances we saw were really around 200 to 1,000 feet, somewhere in there. So again, the distances that City of Wichita uses right now, 200 feet to 1,000 feet, depending on the acreage. So one of the questions that came up was, well, what if we changed it? And there's been meetings where there's been speculation and discussion about what if we did this, what if we did this? So what I wanted to show you was just some scenarios. So this is the current one. 200 to 1,000. There was one scenario where it said, well, let's increase the minimum from 200 to 500. And then we looked at that factor of how much it would increase by, and we increased all the rest of them by that same factor, and ultimately you'd end up with 2,225 if you just multiplied, I think it was by 2.5 each of these. Another scenario then was to take 500 and just make that the minimum, knowing that it's already 500 here, you just make all the top 3 categories 500, and then you keep everything else the same. We only throw those out for conversation purposes, so. I'm interested to get your feedback and what your thoughts are on those. So ultimately, we're really looking at 3 basic choices here. Either keep it the same, no changes, decrease the distance, but again, recognize you can't go lower than 200 feet because that's what the state requirement is, or you can increase the distance. So those are really the 3 different basics. Again, because I think maps are really helpful to kind of illustrate some of these points. Here's some more. So in this case, this is a property in Riverside. So it's typical street grid, kind of fairly medium-sized parcels. And orange is 200 feet, so this is a 200 foot, this is the application property. The orange around it is 200 feet. Green is 500 feet, and then the purple is 1,000 feet. So that is an illustration about how many more properties would be notified if we extend out the distance. Here's an exhibit, where is it? 31st and Meridian, thereabouts. So again, more of a street grid, you can kind of see the number of parcels that would be radiating out. This one's more of a curvilinear example. This is out near Woodlawn and Central. So again, you can get a sense of the properties. In this case, you notice the parcels are a little bit bigger than what we were looking at earlier, so there's fewer properties that are notified in this area. So what we looked at is we looked at costs. So not only do you factor in distance, but there's also a cost element to it. So in this case, applicants, we know they have to pay $175 at a minimum from the title companies to get 10 addresses. And that they're just going to pay that $175 right off the bat. $18 for each additional property beyond 10. Okay. And then for the planning department, we've looked at what our costs were kind of historically for 2022. And we came up with $2.64 is what it costs for, because really what we're doing is taking a list, we print it off, and then we just stick stamps on the envelopes and the labels on the envelopes, and then we print and stuff the envelopes. So it's not a ton of time, but it does take some time and resources to do that. So when we look at the different distances, so again, Riverside, Meridian, Woodlawn, those are 3 examples that we looked at. We have 200 feet, 500 feet, 1,000 feet, and then we have how many people would be notified in each of those scenarios and how much it would cost the applicant and how much it would cost the planning department. So you can see here, the first one, Riverside, it goes, if it's 200 feet, it's 33 properties, that's $594 cost for the applicant, about $87 for the planning department, MAP, Metropolitan Area Planning Department. If we go out to 1,000 feet, it's 390 properties, $7,000 for the applicant and $1,000 for the planning department to do the mailing. Then you can see the other scenarios going down, so you can see from 500 to 6,000, 74 to 908, you kind of get the sense of that. Does that make sense in terms of the financial impact of that? Okay. So now comes the tough part for you, which is what do you think? What do you think is, and really the question is, what is the best fit for Wichita, right? Should there be changes? And if there should be changes, what should they be? I'm happy to flip to any of the slides and materials that were shown leading up to this point. Any questions?
So I have a question, Scott.
Shoot, what you got?
So looking at the existing costs, the applicant is $175 minimum for 10 addresses and $18 per additional property.
Yep.
And potential additional cost is for applicant $2 per property address.
Well, that was a little bit further on. That's a great question. That $2 comes in when we start talking about renters versus owners. Yeah.
Okay, so why, and you probably can't answer this because the title company's charging it, I know because I've, done rezoning. But $18 an address, that's really high. Is there no other options for an applicant other than going to a title company to get the list?
That's the way it's required now. There would be the option of staff to look it up in GIS. But then we would run the risk of, what if we slipped up, what if there was a mistake? What would
Right.
happen in that instance? Could we be charged by the public of planning departments in cahoots with the developer and look, they didn't, or the applicant, they didn't do it? Or the applicant could say, you don't like me, you failed to include all these addresses, so now I gotta go all the way back and start all over again. So, to avoid that mess and implications of either of those, that's why we look for a third party to do it. We could have the applicants just come in with their own list, but then we would have the same accusations, but this time about the applicant in terms of not having a complete list, why did I get left off? So I think that's the reason why we've gone to title companies, because they've got the insurance, they've got they've got standards that they have to meet.
Does the applicant pay that money directly to the title company or
They
they pay, okay,
These are all good questions. This is the tricky one.
Well, and I think that's kind of unfair for the applicant for us to say, well, we're gonna go from 200 feet to 1,000 feet, and how many more properties at $18 a pop for each address? And that, to me, that's a lot to put back on an applicant. However, I still believe that if somebody lives in the area, and instead of sending the notification to the property owner specifically, if they're a tenant, that they get a notification, because whatever happens, even if they're a tenant, we do have tenants that live in the same house for years and years and years, they're gonna be impacted by that as much as what the property owner is gonna be impacted. The property owner in itself may never be impacted unless it's something that really depreciates the value of the property.
And I would encourage everyone to keep that in mind, because we've got a whole nother section in this PowerPoint.
I know, I jumped forward to the next section, I'm so sorry.
Always ahead of the class,
The only reason I would be interested in enlarging the notification area is if those individuals that were weighing in had an opportunity to change the city council vote requirements. You could have one property owner that went in and said, you could go ahead and put up that smelting operation in a residential area, it's okay. And you've got 45 people living there who is gonna have to smell it.
If you look forward to the next meeting, what we have coming.
Yes.
It wasn't an option, but since they pay $175 for 10 addresses, why is there not a minimum of 10 addresses added on?
Yeah, that's just not a standard, so.
I think it'd be, because you had those 3 scenarios, and the bigger the property gets, the less people get notified. So, if we had a minimum of 10, based on what they're paying, they get their money's worth, plus you get 10 opinions. The other thing I had, based on what she asked, I can't even remember what it was now, because one of them days. Sedgwick County, why can't they use Sedgwick County, Oregon, look up the addresses on the property roster, that it's out there, it's accessible,
So certainly could,
and
certainly
they can
could.
print them off on a printer, and then the address wouldn't be them handwriting it, it would be.
Bacon, that's pretty easy to pump out of that.
You put a range in, it brings them all up.
Export to CSV.
Yep.
Or Excel. And it's
Probably
it is
like
a
it.
source that is publicly accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
So if prize came up of preferential treatment, that's not a complete list. You say, well, you go to this website and you can. There is a gotcha using the Sedgwick County when you export it. If you're not at the right level of detail, it won't pick up all the addresses.
Snip and clip.
Good questions, good comments, Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Can we go to the audience for questions? Yes, let's do that. Questions from the audience?
It's a little free flowing, but I think that would work best because of the way that we've compartmentalized the presentation, yeah.
Hey, I have a bit of a question. Preface, 1972, there were 33 people signed up to be put on city council ballot. Well, they changed the filing fee from $5 to $50 to discourage frivolous candidates. So the next election, there were 18. Whoopee. Raising this, if you've got a serious interest in zoning a property, I think spending the appropriate amount of money to notify the appropriate number of people. My example is Southwest Corner, 63rd and Hydraulic, if you'll remember, was very contentious over a open air storage place. Your zoning notification caught one house on the south side of Hydraulic and one over on Pine Bay. The other three corners were, either undeveloped lots, which will never be developed, or vacant commercial properties. And the one to the east or the west, I'm sorry, was the owner's home. So he wasn't gonna vote against it. So after all this contentious stuff, the zoning was approved. Guess what? Nothing's been built. So really didn't have a lot of skin in the game. Then you go north on Hydraulic from your place. Same thing, had to zone this thing, paid 100 and something for the property. Got it rezoned, now they want 700 for it, there's still nothing been done. So, I think it's reasonable to get the zoning or the notification area out to where people that could be impacted and, compared to what people are gonna spend on their project, pretty minimal.
I think that depends on, though, what the project is. If we've got somebody that's gonna get a conditional use permit to add an accessory dwelling because they want to make their garage into a mother-in-law house, I think that's a lot different than a developer that's coming in to spend millions of dollars to develop something or, build a business where an additional $18 for, 25 more addresses, they don't care.
So where do you draw the line between a mother-in-law house and 24?
I don't know, I'm just saying, I think there's a lot different of an impact.
I understand.
And it's fair to, you can even just leave it at that in terms of there should be a difference between certain types of what type of project it is. And then you can say, this is what we want. We're not exactly sure how to get there. And then that becomes staff's responsibility.
We did a body shop in the 1600 block of South Broadway, not a body shop. It's a vacant building now.
These are only coming to play.
1500, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's right. Only when there's a zoning action, a conditional use, or a full-on zone change. Yeah.
So if somebody wants to put a mother-in-law, do they have to change the zoning at all?
It depends. And that's actually,
Maybe I like your mother-in-law.
It's really good. Yeah, it depends on your mother. No, it depends, and it depends on what the property is zoned for already. So if it's zoned for, oh gosh, I'm probably not the best one to ask this question for, but if it's zoned SF5, right, it requires a conditional use in order to do it. TF3, it amazes me, it still requires a conditional use for it, even though it's two-family zoning. But so there's, and I would like very much to come forward to you at some point with a proposal on changing that, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I'm your next door neighbor, it'll be all right if you move another one.
Well, we have another question in the audience.
So the letters that are sent to the homeowners that have rental properties, is the language the same in those letters they receive, or is there any type of encouragement to try to encourage them to share this with their tenants?
So two topics. So in terms of the tenants never receive notification on our current processes. So we only send it, or state statute requires that you send it to property owners, so that's who we send it to. We've got another topic in this PowerPoint where we'll talk about should renters receive it. And the other one is about the language in the letter. And I apologize that I didn't bring the examples, but I will show you an example of what we're working towards. And I think we'll have to do another iteration and bring that out for folks to see. But there's been a question and a request to simplify the letter and make it easier to understand.
All right, Scott.
Okay, you ready for the next one?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, here we go. Uh-oh, I think that wore out. Oh, it's going down? Okay, good. All right, so mail notifications, who should receive them? So you all are like ahead, which is great because you're thinking about all this. So the recipients, so again, to notify property owners, only property owners, that's per the state statute. So we contacted other cities and we asked them, hey, who do you send out zoning notices to? And they said exclusively to property owners. owners, which was kind of interesting to find out that that's who they send them to. So again, your possible options are, you can say no changes, keep sending them just to property owners. We can't reduce the distribution because that's required, so we know we're not gonna do any fewer. So the question for you is, do you stick at no changes or do you increase the distribution to people other than the property owners? So for notification areas, we've seen anywhere from 8 to 400 plus. I think the one that we did at Town East for the bowling alley was like thousands of people. And so it can vary significantly. I want to highlight, and I can't stress enough, that apartments can be especially problematic for us because we don't know the units that are in there. Condos, we do, because we can see the ownership. But for apartment buildings, we can't tell if it's 2 units or 50 units. So that can be problematic. In terms of the existing costs, you all saw this before. It's 175 for 10, 18 for the additional, mailing about 264 for the planning department. Now, for the applicant, there's one title company that does provide the address and it provides the property address as part of the report, so that we know the address of what property they've done the search on. There's another title company who actually handles probably 90% of these reports that get delivered to the planning department, and they do not actually include the property address of the property that's been queried. They only include the owner's address and like a property description of what it is. So to get the address of the actual property costs an additional $2. So that's where that $2 comes from. And then for us to send out an additional letter, it's at $264. So what we looked at is we said, okay, what does this look like in terms of numbers? Well, so we figured 30 properties in the notification area. So they would get the addresses, so $60 extra for the applicant. And then for us, what we figured is, so there's 30 properties in the notification area. Let's say there's 20% of them are renters, so 6 properties, so 6 times $2.64 gets us to an additional $15.84. That all makes sense? It's just a hypothetical. Okay, so the question for you all is, what do you think about that? And for us, it's relatively easy to find out if we think it's a renter, because the owner, where the owner lives, could be Florida, and if the address is in Wichita, we know that it's probably a rental, so we just send one to the property as well as the owner. Okay, thoughts, questions?
I think the apartment complexes, there should only be one notice sent. Like an official notice that you put in the lobby, have them posted in the lobby or whatever, call for input or whatever. Because that would be crazy. And
Well,
most of
you
those
said
end up in
with an
jail
agent,
anyway,
right.
just to the note, to the owner, the current address, whatever, current owner.
Debbie?
Title companies, do you have a contract with them to keep that cost at that?
We don't, because it's actually between the applicant and the title company. We just called up the title company and said, hey, how much do you charge for this? And what would it cost to do this? That's what we got.
But if you recommend them and you make them the only 2 choices, you could get a contract to lock in the prices.
I guess hypothetically, that would be possible. We could even issue an RFP and do something similar to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Sorry, I've been writing contracts today.
No, this is
It's a
great.
new job opportunity that I didn't want.
Other questions or comments from the dad?
Well, what I haven't gotten is I haven't gotten a strong sense of preference on this one. Should we keep it the same or should we change it? What do you
I
think?
prefer we include renters
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Evening, though.
because I think they need to be notified, and I certainly, if I rented a property and an event center was gonna go 25 feet from my rental property, and I was gonna have to listen to the noise from an event center, I'd certainly want to know that ahead of time. So I think there are certain things that go in, especially those things that create noise or smell, either
Or
or,
worse.
dirt,
Or have a beautiful view.
drunken people, messing out in the front yard, wrecking into the wrecking into the house. I don't know. I mean, I think there's certain things that even if I'm a tenant, I want to know those things about that are going to, you know, potentially go on around where I live. So that's just going to be my opinion. I don't know what the rest of that things.
Would this affect, like, would the property owners still be the only person that would be able to voice a protest? Or would this
Yes.
extend
No.
protestability? No,
No,
okay.
so far, we're just talking about notification. You can provide input about the protest as well, but the purpose tonight is to talk about notification, certainly. But, let me, what else? There was something else I was gonna say in terms of, the renter though can still show up at the MAPC and at the DAB meeting
Got
and
it.
still send in letters and everything. They just don't have access to that protest process.
Got
But
it.
renters are able to vote in local elections, right?
Correct.
We don't
Yes.
say, oh, you don't own property in town, so you can't vote.
But I don't think because they receive notification, I'm not sure that most renters are, well, I don't know that most people overall, even property owners, exactly know, even if they receive notification, like, what is this all about? But if the renters don't get notification, they just see a sign out there, likelihood that they know what this is about or how that could impact them probably is.
Or what they can do about it.
It's very little, so, sorry, Mr. Luke.
Which brings up the question, when you notify anybody out of town, out of state, out of country, do you keep track of what the percentages are that correspond back to you or communicate with you?
No, what we'll do is if someone contacts us and we've got, if they email us or whatnot, we will keep their contact information, so if anything happens with the case, we notify them. In terms of the protest, we do keep track of the protest forms that come in and we verify them with the ownership list, and then we make sure that it's all the owners, and that determines whether or not it can get to that 20% threshold.
What I'm concerned about is if you have the place rented, do you care what happens as long as checks are coming in? Or do you just say, well, that sounds like a good idea, I'm not gonna worry about it?
It depends on the
Renter could
land.
move out because of what happens.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one, and I think it depends on the situation.
Well, there's some people that are good landlords, some people that are not very good, so.
So
Yeah.
the property owner would get if we changed it, increased distribution. Property owner gets a letter. Would the ones the renters be different and tell them to notify their property owner to protest?
I'll tell you, gosh, for simplicity, it'd be the more similar we can keep things, the less customized things are, the less likely that we're gonna make a mistake in the planning department, and the more fair, hopefully, it is for everyone. But I would, if we send it to renters, my thought would be to keep the letter the same, but to explicitly make sure that it's identified that the owners of the property can protest, so that way it's a clue to the renter, hey, I need to get in touch with the landlord if I'm opposed to this thing.
Mr. Luke?
Well, this is rare, but I lived in a town that had this where they had an HOA, yeah. But they would not sell the land to the people that built the houses. The land was still maintained by a corporation. So if you wanted to protest, do you have a legal right to protest if you don't own the land or just?
You do not in the state of Kansas, not through this zoning process. You've got to be but that's an interesting one because the buildings are owned differently than the land.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll have to backtrack on that one and say I'd have to consult with legal on that one. But I will tell you though, we have had mobile home parks that are in that same situation, and I don't believe that they've counted the mobile homeowners. I think it's been the property owners. But again, I'd need to consult with legal to get the final answer on it.
Well, I don't think it happens much anymore. Most people want to buy the land that they build it.
So would a mobile home park fall into the same category as apartments?
I believe that it would, yes, because when you look at the GIS data, it shows one owner for a mobile home park. It doesn't show the mobile homes themselves. Yeah. It'd be similar to an apartment complex, yeah.
Okay, anybody else from the DAB? Otherwise, I'll go to the public.
Yeah, I did just wanna say, like, Yeah, I would support, including the renters, and giving them some heads up and some notification. I came over here from the first district DAB, and that was something we heard fairly often. Was that renters really wished, because they would get last minute notice from their neighborhood association and they had no idea. And so I think that's something that would be appreciated by renters.
Yes, Jerry.
I live in a corporation, so it'd be into the same thing. One person makes the decision, but all the members should be notified. I'd agree with that.
All right, we'll go to the public.
That's pretty well where I was going. You mentioned HOAs. Most of them have a communication system within themselves. Why not just notify whoever the contact person at the HOA is and let them decide to disseminate or not disseminate, or, get their back arched or whatever they have to do. We've got a Facebook group when it works. We communicate rather freely.
I don't have an HOA or a neighborhood.
Well, I understand that, but then the other thing is, you talk about apartment complexes, do they have an equivalent of an HOA? Normally?
In my experience, it's usually the landlord, it's just a matter of how they run, how they operate.
Yeah, they're just a bunch of snobby people that stay in their own little compartment silo. Okay.
Maybe a
Just
bulletin
curious.
board in the office or something.
I'm sorry, sir?
Just a bulletin board in the office or something.
There you go. Yeah, like Seinfeld.
All right, anybody else from the public? If not, we're moving on.
Okay, so
Thank you.
just one quick note is that the general consensus that I think I'm picking up is that that there should be notification to the renters, not just property owners.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so in terms of languages, so during the city council discussions, there was a desire just to look into whether or not notification letters should be provided in Spanish and Vietnamese, the two most prominent languages other than English in the Wichita community. So we went through the effort of looking at different translation services. We looked at Google Translate. We looked at contractor that City of Wichita has. We looked at other City of Wichita staff. We did a lot of exploring. We talked with legal. Legal came back and they said there were due process concerns. And so they advised against sending notifications out in Spanish or Vietnamese or languages other than English. And the reason why is because if there was an error or something was not translated correctly, appropriately, that it would violate someone's opportunity to have due process and equal process under what's required. So their advice on this one is not to send out anything other than what's in English. What I will say as a side note, though, is that it doesn't happen very often, but we do have occasions when folks come in and they need Spanish translation in our office simply to understand what is going on either with the letter or most commonly it's with an application. And through the city is a contract with a company where you can call them up and then they will have a translator on the phone and they can get you whatever language you want and they will translate. And so we have just started just now, we're in the process of getting that set up. So we'll have that, but we've got a staff person who speaks Spanish who's been able to translate in the meantime. But that's a side note. This is what I'm here, I guess, to tell you.
Well, do you make that opportunity available? I mean, do you tell people that that's available to them?
We have not advertised it yet. That's a good question. And probably could put something on our website about if you need assistance before you come in and let us know.
Is it typically hasn't the onus typically been on the language speaker to get their own? They would be familiar with translation services and know when something isn't right.
It is, and it creates kind of an awkward situation because we just had this happen a couple of weeks ago where someone came in, they spoke Spanish, they were, I think they were an applicant in fact, and they did not have anyone to translate for them. And so we were in a scramble like, oh great, what do we do? Because this creates a challenge. Well, so our staff person was willing to translate for them. But the issue is that as a staff person who's translating for the applicant, what about the conflict of interest there? And so the legal team like scrambled real quick and they're like, well, do you give consent for the staff person to do it? And they said yes, so we ultimately were able to get through it, but it's kind of a tricky situation.
The equal protection and due process, that's bothering me, because if it's in English and they can't read it, then they're still not getting equal protection and due process.
Good question. I think because it's the official language, I think that's what it comes down to.
See, I work in medical, and we're required to have a translation company.
Really?
Yes, we are. Passy in that one that you call in, because we use them.
Yeah, Propio, I think is there.
Yeah.
Not an advertisement form, just,
Well, I'm not sure if it's that one or a new one,
okay.
but I'll get the name and bring it next DAB meeting for you.
Okay, yeah, if you get it back,
but-
that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, this right here, they don't get equal protection, and having your employee translate
Mhm.
puts you in a liability situation also, because what if she translates incorrectly?
Absolutely. I couldn't
Because
agree
there are
more.
several slangs in each language.
Yep.
Amaya, you're up next.
Yes. I guess my question is, like, would it be possible to let those services for translation are available on the notification? Just because I'm worried that, you know, somebody who doesn't speak English well or can't understand it well, like, I don't know, like they might just disregard it because they
Yeah.
don't know. And I think that would be helpful, because I don't think most people would think like, oh, let me go on the city of Wichita's website to see if they have services. I think most just might put it on the table, put it in trash or something.
And we thought about that and we looked at that. That one still came up with concerns from legal, just because we were pointing them to a particular resource or let's say it didn't work appropriately or something, so. There
You
was
gotta support your.
still concerns that came up. Good question.
Carry on.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So we contacted other jurisdictions and they said that none of them indicated that they provide notices in languages other than English. So that's really all I have on that topic.
Yeah. Is there any questions from the public?
No, I'm looking.
All right.
Okay, carry on.
Oh, wait, do we have a question online?
Yes, I actually went to a homeowner's house just this last weekend for a protest petition, and the family was blind. Their daughter was like reading everything to them. So do we have anything to help blind owners? Because they had no idea about a zoning case that was happening across the street from them.
Good question. I believe that would fall under ADA in terms of accommodations. And that's a great question. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that one. I would have to look into that.
Surely if you're visually impaired, you have somebody that helps you with your mail every day, right?
Yes, it was their like 14-year-old daughter who doesn't understand everything that she's reading to them.
Yeah, she would.
And I would think too, I would think that that would fall under like ADA.
Yeah.
So I would think that there would be an accommodation that would be up to us to provide. You know, and that situation, it could be something as simple as even if just getting on a phone call and explaining what's going on. But then I guess it does does it run into the same conflict of a due process but to the effect that staff are the ones who produce the letter, staff are the ones who are providing that. And the chance of mistranslation, if it's in English, shouldn't really be an issue. I think that probably is less of a concern for legal. Sorry, I'm thinking on the fly, but that's where I'm at on it.
Okay, very good. Carry on.
Okay, so we'll keep moving. Letter content. Okay, so there was a desire that was expressed at the city council level to make the letter easier to read and understand. And I'll tell you, we really were pained by this because in the planning department, we get paid by the word. Just kidding, just kidding.
On the slide.
Yeah, by the slide, that's right. So this is just a visual that shows what our current letter typically looks like. So it says It says, case number, request, who the applicant is, it says there will be a public hearing, it gives the date. It says how you can participate, it lists all of our zoning districts, which is kind of an interesting deal. And then, how to provide comments ahead of time, it gives you where you can submit them, what the deadline is. It talks about, how you have the right to participate, if you choose, you can submit written comments. It talks about conditional uses, it gives a map, so it's quite extensive, it takes up I think it's 4 pages long. What we've done is we looked at it and we said, how can we simplify it? So, as an example, we've given what the application number is, what the request is for, who's the schedule of events, where they're located, what time of day they are. And then to submit comments, how you can contact the planning department. We would insert a map on it. We would give contact information, email, mailing address, and phone for the planning department. And then how you can participate as well. There was a virtual option that's no longer available, but that was included on this draft. So this is kind of the concept that we're thinking of at this point. I don't really have a whole lot to say other than just that we want to try and streamline it to what the core information is. We do find that people come in and they're like, I've got all the zoning districts, what's going on here? Any thoughts, comments, questions?
I can see making it more appropriate to the case would make sense, not overwhelm. You want to give them context, right? You want to try to teach them, but it may be a little too overwhelming.
Questions?
Yeah,
Mr. Luke?
Scott,
Yeah.
that's one thing you might take the other dabs, is example of the letter that is currently being written, because it looks very complex even in the paperwork here.
Yeah.
You might want to pass it around and look at it to get a better feel for
Yeah.
how detailed or how confusing it is.
Well, I'll tell you at a minimum, what I'd like to do is, we're out, we're getting feedback and comments. It would be probably pretty simple for us to go ahead and refine, finish up that draft, polish it off, and then recirculate it to all the dabs, just so that you have an opportunity to see it, and you can even email us comments or something on it. Because just like tonight, I think more people looking at it and thinking about stuff certainly makes the end product better.
I think it's a good idea to simplify and really draw focus to the most important information, what's going on, what area is affected, and how they can be involved or ask questions if they need to.
Especially the last part, like how do you be involved? I think that's.
Mr. Luke, did you have another?
This might sound like a very stupid question. I live across the street from Plant Park. If they do anything major over there, are they supposed to send me a letter?
Well, in this case, only zoning related. This is only about zoning. So if they were to change the land use or do something that's not already allowed by the zoning, then,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
No.
I'm watching.
No.
We're putting the smelting company in the middle of class.
Well, the creek's there, why not?
So any questions, comments from the public?
Based on some past experiences, I can understand taking that whole grid out with all those things that don't apply to the situation.
Uh-huh.
If there were just what they were applying for, SF5 or whatever it is, if there were just a definition of what is allowed by right in the zoning being requested, I think that would help because, we've had situations where they applied for something innocuous, but at that zoning, there were some things that weren't so innocuous that were allowed by right.
So, add what is allowed by right in the zoning district.
Sorry, sir.
So I think your suggestion is to add what is allowed by right in the zoning district
That's
in
being
the
applied for.
application, so that they know.
Doesn't matter what it was before or is now. It's what are you going for?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
what's the potential backhanded?
Yeah, well, I mean, that does happen, right?
Yeah, it does.
We'll see general
Right.
commercial and most people will think commercial endeavor, but they don't realize it's all the different things that can fall in that.
Yes.
Like liquor store, I think is one.
Yeah. You could apply for a body shop and put a, a salvage yard,
We
correct.
don't allow that one, we don't allow that one, but
I was thinking of something more body.
All right, we're going to the back.
We just had
a neighborhood advisory board, I guess, or a neighborhood association, and there was a zoning change for a church. And the purpose was stated on the change was a teenage rehabilitation center.
Yep.
And as we got into it, it was not a teenage rehabilitation center, it was a men's rehabilitation center. And this butted up against our neighborhood. And once we found out it was a men's, you know, over 18, it really stirred the pot. And I understand that they backed out of this, but need to make sure the purpose is right.
In that particular instance, that one was a little bit interesting because that was the name of the organization, was Teen Challenge. And yes, the application was for adults to be there.
Yeah.
It was an adult facility, so, yeah, that's a little tricky.
I mean, it really stirred them up.
And now,
I've never seen this neighborhood so united.
and they don't mean tricky in terms of trying to evade anything, I'm just trying to say it was a little bit, you can see how there was difference of what was stated in the name of the organization versus what the expectations were.
But yeah, just make sure that they get the wording right.
All right, any other comments?
Okay, thank you all. I know that takes a lot of time, but it's to go in depth with all that, but I certainly appreciate all the.
Well, you're getting paid by the word.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
John.
exactly. Thank you.
We didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to agenda item number 7, updates, issues, and reports.
All right, well, actually, we did have such a good turnout at the neighborhood association. We're gonna be passing out phantom zoning cases at all of the other neighborhood associations. Get everybody riled up and have some big meetings. No, it was, I wouldn't say contentious, that, you know, people are always concerned about what's going on in their backyard, and it's justifiable. You wanna protect your community and your neighborhood. A lot of times, duo challenges and concerns kind of butt up against each other. Zoning cases, I'm not gonna lie, they're the toughest ones I have to face because there's legitimate concerns on both sides and legitimate goals on both sides, so it did not go through, or they pulled back their application here recently. I think you guys all got that in the email, and so we'll move on, and I'm sure there will be another one here in the next 2 or 3 months. Yeah, Mike?
When there's zoning cases presented to the city, is there a correlation that they notify the county so the county can adjust the property taxes?
No, but I think,
That's the appraiser.
yeah, that really would be the responsibility of the appraiser in terms of making, because they do the taxes based on use, and so when they go through. That's a fascinating question though, so my initial answer is it's on the appraiser, but I'd have to look into it and learn more.
Thank you.
Based on last night's cab meeting, if the appraiser is going to give a presentation, try to be absent that night. It is boring.
All right, just a couple of things here real quick. Campaign finance got repealed at the council meeting yesterday. Kind of a weird little thing. I ended up voting for the repeal, but it was because there were other reforms that we threw in there that actually made the process more transparent than it had been prior to us banning it. So I wanted to make sure those reforms are actually in there. Going forward in the future, I'm gonna be looking for every single opportunity. Janet came and did great. She really kind of laid it out, the concerns with the way our campaign finance laws are currently on the books, just kind of some of the constraints and loopholes and potential for abuses. So I appreciate you coming up and laying it all out like that. So again, we're going to continue to look for opportunities. I don't think we have a council right now that's particularly open to campaign finance reform, but maybe there's some things on the edges that we can find and work on together. So we'll continue looking at that.
Mike, can I ask you,
Yes, ma'am.
it was a 7-0 vote. So why did the 4 people, well, of course, they're not all there, but why did the people that are still there, why did they change their votes? You changed your vote.
I actually, like I said, I changed my vote because I knew the writing was on the wall as far as the campaign finance reform getting repealed. They had 4 votes no matter what. When we were in discussion, some of them were not comfortable with, like the change that we had was the LLC principal owners have to list their names on the campaign finance, reports. So some of the council members were not comfortable with that and they were voicing their displeasure with that. Some of the other council members, we don't go and talk about who's voting for what. So as far as I knew, it could have been a 2-5 vote instead of 7-0 like it was. So it was more to ensure that that was gonna happen. If that vote failed, they were right, the very next vote would have been on just repealing the whole thing totally, without the additional transparency. And I think that would have passed with 4 votes. So again, it was kind of the lesser of the evils. So you never know what the votes are gonna end up, and I wanted to make sure at least we had some more transparency than we originally did. So I'm not selling out to the LLCs, don't worry, I'm not.
Thanks.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, disappointing, you know, we put a lot of work in that. It was gonna get repealed by the way. We are going to DC. This is our annual trip. We talked to people on the Hill. We talked to some of the big organizations out there. Not always. We got some good WIFIA rates the last time or 2 times ago that we went with our sewage treatment plant. So we are talking to the post office about the process for mailboxes going to the curbs with a lot of the dog bites or loose dogs even. There's some things about that trouble a couple of the council members, especially those of us in the lower income districts. They're not necessarily sticking to the process that we agreed to. So we will be talking to somebody with the postal service, the postmaster's office.
Can you see if whatever rules if you can change anything, if it can be retroactive?
We're gonna ask about that, yeah. I don't know that I have a whole lot of hope for that. And my box has been out on the curb for 8 years too. So I feel you there. And especially the things that we're gonna press are people with disabilities, elderly people. First you move the box to the curb, and then if there's another attack, I don't quite understand this one, because if it's on the curb, you just don't put it off in the mail truck. But if there's another instance of a loose dog or anything that they feel uncomfortable about, and then it's gonna be a cluster box, one cluster box in the middle of the block.
So why, yeah, I read that. So why, if the carrier is in his truck, how can he be threatened? I mean, if he's, you know, if he's already delivering to curbside mailboxes, how can he feel threatened by a dog outside?
I agree. That's gonna be something.
I can answer that. They deliver packages that won't fit in the mailbox. They have to bring your board.
No, they won't.
Yes, they
Well,
do at
that's-
my house.
No, not all of them.
Well, they do at my house.
They won't at mine.
That's part of it too, like a lot of the neighborhoods who have been reaching out to us since we started talking about this, they won't deliver to the door anymore.
No.
Because of some past dog attacks.
My regular carrier will not deliver to the door, but he's a jerk. But if it's a sub, the sub will take it to my step and leave it there. But, and you can't get anything done with, I've talked to the postmaster at length.
Right.
And, you know,
Sometimes it's just pounding their head against the brick wall,
Yeah.
so hopefully we can get some movement going, talking to some people.
I think Jerry had a comment.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing she was talking. We have cluster boxes. I talked to Munger Station a couple times. Sherry just was unbudgeable. This had to be done, and our mail carrier has been approached at the cluster boxes by loose dog. So it's just one thing after.
Yeah. I hear you. So I'm
a statement word push.
Yeah, something like I know I'm on the left over here, but sometimes the people on the right are correct about government, overbearing government, kind of the bureaucracy of it. So, like I said, we're gonna talk to them and kind of push the issue a little bit. Another one are trains. Here on the south side. We know up on, especially the north side, the 21st and Broadway, that area. We keep seeing it all the time. Again, it's that even goes back to Civil War laws, because it has to have laws in the Civil War giving the train companies just carte blanche. You can move because they needed to move the troops everywhere and they never went back on it. And so we're still held to those. Now, there's been a lot of pressure lately, especially with some of the train derailments, to look at addressing some of these issues. So hopefully we can at least add our voice to it, talk about some of the concerns down here. We do have some funding to study some train bridges in the city. So there might be something further down the line to come from that, but I won't be in office, I'm pretty sure, whenever that project might get off the tracks there a little bit, pun intended. Good news with the bridges at Clap Park. We sent it back out to the bid. We got some very favorable bids. So I think we're gonna be able to address the bridges, safety, pull out one or two of them that's beyond repair. Making sure that they're ready for cross-country season, for people playing disc golf, for the kids around there. So good news with the bridges. That's kind of a crisis averted there. Tomorrow, a few of the council members and I and the mayor are meeting with the chief and some other representatives to look about. I think I spoke to it last time about the Omaha model as far as youth violence goes. They have a very promising program down there. Our assistant city manager was actually very instrumental in helping to set that up. So this is another part of the plan that we're going to do, because we do got to do something about youth violence. And I talked about it last time. Half of the violence out there that we have now are 14-year-olds, misled 14-year-olds, and the other half is domestic violence. So we got to really make sure that we get our hands around both of those, because it's just tough. If I'm just being honest here, it's been tough to really look at the pictures of that little 1-year-old who got shot. And we see it growing.
Yep.
And I got a 1-year-old at home. And so that really sticks with me. And so we're gonna do what we can. It's, we can never stop everything, but we can certainly try and do better, I think, than we are right now. Hilltop has an Easter egg hunt, March 30th, I believe, the day before Easter. Is that correct, Derek? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about some of the other egg hunts. I wanted to make sure and put that one in as well. We recently did put out our home loan program for low income up to $25,000 loans to work on your houses. We need people to get into this, especially if their houses are on the verge of becoming old and decrepit. I don't want to knock down houses. I honestly don't. I want people to take care of them. I want people to have the means of taking care of them. This will help people stay in their homes, not have to move into worse off situations. It could help with people becoming homeless as well. So we'll post on our Facebook page anyways. We have in the past, but we'll make sure to post it again. If you know people that can get into this program and it can help, please get them into the program, because we want to make sure that we do everything we can to help people out and keep them in their.
So we just get that sent to DAB members too, if you haven't clicked on it.
One or two final things here. Jardine is the only school that's closing in our district. Very unfortunate, because it's right in the middle of a neighborhood that needs it the most, Plainview. Most of the kids that went to that school are transplants. There was a magnet school, or it is still for another couple of months. But there's about 190 neighborhood kids there. And they're going to have to go to Mead now, Mead Middle School. Our transit department is working with Jardine. We actually have a bus going through there now on the route to take kids to East High School. This is just right on the edge of the 2.5 miles between Plainview and Mead. So you cross Pawnee, you cross Hillside, you cross Mount Vernon. So we're looking at extending a bus service for them as well, because it's not beyond the limit to where the school district is responsible for busing. So we're going to do what we can to look out for the kids It's also a program to help increase ridership because people start riding the bus, they get a little more used to it, and then as they grow a little older, maybe that's a method that they like to take. So we're trying that out as well, but again, gotta look out for the kids most of all. And the last thing, real quick. Cindy, our chair, she has turned out. Tonight is her final meeting. Congratulations on that. We tried to send you out with a bang. Instead, it was a nice, easy meeting, so. I appreciate everything you've ever done, Cindy. I've learned a ton from you, just inside of that, outside of that. We all know you're gonna continue all the work you do in our community, in our city, in our district. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for all your years of service here. She will still be our representative on MAPC. She does a great job there. I think she really reflects the values of our community. So again, thank you for everything you do, Cindy, and cookies will always be here if you want to come and hang out. So
I do appreciate the opportunity. I've had 8 years to serve on the DAB, and I think it's been 8 years, maybe, I don't know, 22. It seems like 8, but no, I really have appreciated the opportunity to come here and be a part of the DAB. So thank you for allowing me that opportunity. But on that note, since this is my last meeting and I am the chair and we lost our vice chair, I did challenge you all to think last time about whether any of you wanted to step up and be chair or vice chair. So I'm putting that out there before we wrap up this meeting today. You had a month to think about it.
Do we still have a meeting on the 30th of this
We do
month?
have training on the 30th, so if we need to table it until then, we'll have a couple of members onboarding.
it's the will of the DAB. I'm just here in an advisory mode and
So we could decide at those meetings, do we have an agenda or a form?
Tony said he's willing to be vice chair.
Oh, why don't you go for the?
Janet is also on our board. She just arrived late, so she's currently sitting
Sorry, you got roped in?
in the public.
Janet, are you interested in being chair?
Yes.
I wouldn't want to take it away from anyone that wanted it, who's been here, obviously.
Well, we're all, jumping all over each other.
And Janet has.
Well, the pay raise is the deal.
Oh, well,
But I feel it's maybe a chair for 6 months and then 6 months and get a feel for it.
That's, like I said, that's up to you. I'm
At least go 2 years.
If you resign, you can always resign from being chair and you're not resigning.
I know.
So does somebody want to make a motion for Tony to become chair of this DAB?
Oh, so moved.
Brian wants it, yeah.
Okay, I have a motion by Michael and a second by Jerry. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, buddy.
The hair starts to turn
And
gray.
you all can still think about that vice chair position.
You got a month to change your mind too.
Yeah.
So, all right, with that, I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that.
Yeah, for you. You brought up the subject of railroads.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know they're more powerful than God. I understand that, and I know why, even before Civil War. But we had a big dog and pony show here back when Jim Skelton was the councilman, when they were talking about bridges over here and there. I guarantee you the railroads will resist to the death elevation changes.
Yep.
Stack up and stretch out, dangerous.
You're not lying. I got pushed back already.
Okay.
Talking about it.
You already heard it, forget I said anything.
Yeah, no, it's good for public consumption, right?
Have you got some tentative dates for the park and the road improvements on Mount Vernon? What I'm afraid of is they're both gonna happen at the same time.
Well, we're coordinating.
They are not happening at the same time. They did
I
talk
need a
about that.
flying car to get out of your
Yeah.
house.
Last.
We're coordinating with that. We're
Because
also,
you got the bridges in the mix, you're gonna have a lot of people in that area at one time, that's all I'm worried about.
well, the road, the main thing about Mount Vernon is we're coordinating to where it's not during the school year. So we gotta do it while the school's not
From what I remember, they're doing the park first and then the road comes right out.
Sure.
So,
Okay, well, that makes sense.
but they are not overlapping at this time.
Mike, oh, sorry.
From what I remember, he said he's putting in the parking lot for the road cut in. So that they have some place for the school. to
Yeah,
park.
that's the.
Right, so all the work in Cloud Park will happen first and then they will do the work on East Knox.
So the parking lot's going in.
It's part of the park, Cloud Park, part of the dog park.
Gotcha. There's putting the other works. Got 3 parks there.
Councilman Holheim,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Debbie, were you done?
No, yes, ma'am, go for it.
I did not get the chance to attend the session at South High regarding the mental health hospital. I just was curious if you could maybe give us an overview, or I think you were there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The thoughts about what the community felt like overall about placing that mental health hospital where it's proposed to be placed.
It was a well-attended meeting. There were concerns there from many of the immediate neighbors. About, I think the main point of contention is 25 of the beds in the mental health facility will be for people who are awaiting evaluation through the criminal justice system. So people who are sitting in jail right now. Some people are sitting there for a year and a half waiting because either Larned or Osawatomie are the nearest hospitals for it to go. It was very informative, how they were talking about and discussing it. Sheriff Easter got up there, he said that, because there's other considerations, I think Riverside Hospital is another consideration. Sheriff Easter got up and said that the safest place we could do it is there because it would be built from the bottom up and be able to have all the safety protocols built into the system. I'm not a sheriff, I'm not an engineer, I can't speak to that either way. But that is, what the sheriff, has said about it. They're talking 50 beds, but there's honestly a lot of momentum towards building 100 beds. I'm not sure if we can staff 100 right now or not, but we definitely will be able to in the future. So if we do build it from the bottom up, I think 100 beds is probably more appropriate. But yeah, several of the neighbors who were in the immediate vicinity did have concerns as far as having this facility put there. As far as the crowd, I would say maybe 50-50. It was tough to really say because they had people write the questions on note cards and read them out loud. I think there's legitimate concerns there. I also think there's validity going through the process where you have it written down so that way it doesn't get hijacked.
Yeah.
A meeting like that gets hijacked. So it was very informative. I do believe it was recorded. I think you could go on the county website.
Oh, I did not know that.
So I do believe so.
And well attended, I guess.
I'd say over 200. Jared?
Well, I appreciate that.
Are all beds full now in all those facilities, besides nothing on the building? And are they kind of, when they have someone that need to put in there, or they have to wait till someone gets out before they can put them in?
Are you talking Larned and Osawatomie?
Kind of everywhere, because I know we have a couple of issues in our neighborhood, and I heard they were sitting in jail because there wasn't a bed available for them to go to till they released somebody from the bed who could be homicidal. So they just didn't know what to do with him, so he sat in jail, which is where he belongs, until he could be helped or whatever. I don't want you to pass judgment, but
But he can be held in jail, that's the whole
that's
thing.
what I mean. He has to be taken somewhere, but he's not safe in our neighborhood. So
Right.
something has to be done somehow, and I don't know how to address it. That's my question.
Well, those are, that's why they included the 25 beds locally, was for that, because, yeah, Larned and Osawatomie, that's leading to the year and a half wait for those evaluations to be done.
I'm aware of this one individual, he had several cases, and they just didn't know what to do, and
Right, in your area, and that's right next to mine,
Yeah.
we've borne the brunt of that for years now, because St. Joe's is essentially, up until recently, has been the regional mental health hospital.
they were
This will
fixing
be,
a complicated right across the street there,
yeah,
and that just meant he came right to our back door.
yeah, but this facility will be different, because if you go to this facility, you're checked in. St. Joe, that if we take you down there, if you're having a mental health episode and WPD drops you off at St. Joe, they can't hold you for more than 24 hours.
Yeah.
So after 24 hours, you can walk right out the front door, right into our neighborhood, take off your clothes, climb up in a tree naked and have WPD come.
We've seen it all.
That's an actual case, so yeah. So, it's definitely needed. Like it's a county decision right now as to where to put it, so I'll bow out of that one. Thank God for once the city's not the focal point as far as contention there.
But we have to address the mental health and substance abuse issues in this community and
5 years ago.
well, yeah, 10 years ago. And these places that we're gonna put in, they have to go someplace. I mean, they have to go someplace, really. And I mean, personally, I'm more afraid of the people that are walking the streets that should be locked up than those that are locked up and in my neighborhood. That's really scary for me. And I think I see that overall is that we have a lot of community issues, whether that's homelessness or poverty or the increase in violence or whatever that are growing. And these are community issues. We have to, as a community, come together and address these issues because we can't lean on and expect that the government's gonna cure all these issues for our community. We as community members have to get engaged in solving these issues. And that means being open at some point in time to having facilities put out there where we can house people, whether it's Oxford houses or mental health hospitals or whatever. I'll get off myself.
You got an Oxford house right in your neighborhood.
What?
You got an Oxford house right in your neighborhood, right across 55th Street.
I rather have it there than again, people running the streets that need a place to go and get treatment.
How many people did they turn out when they closed Jedford Hill at Afton? Had a facility, then.
Yeah, no, I appreciated, Commissioner Howe, his work on that.
Absolutely.
He.
Yeah, he was totally against the closure.
Yes, shouldn't be.
Yeah, when did the whole Riverside thing come up? That's just come late to the party, hasn't it?
No, both us and the county have been looking at it. That's actually one of the spots we have identified for the multi-agency center or an affordable housing piece with it. So there's a bit of contention there between city and some people in the state who would rather have a mental health hospital go there. So there's a lot of balls in the air as far as locations go.
The guy that owns it is, I mean, that's his business. And well, just what I read was that, everything else was pretty much done. And then Riverside came to the party.
Yeah.
And then a couple of people in Topeka jumped on the bandwagon and now it is a big deal. I know where Jeff Easter stands on it. And he is definitely not in favor of the Riverside facility because, well, it's, it'll have to be torn down probably and rebuilt. It'd probably be more expensive to do it than what they've already decided. So I don't know. It's so many politics involved that
the county identified 4 locations. It was where it's scheduled to go now, or planned on going now. Riverside Hospital, and then I think in the middle, Park City and Bel Air. I could be off. It's 2 of the outlying cities there, like right on Main Street almost. So, the committee that was set up by the governor, including some county commissioners and state legislators, decided on where it was. I believe that vote was even unanimous, but don't quote me on that. But that's where they decided that the best place was for it to go. And then, politics enters the equation. I'll just keep it there and be diplomatic about it.
Okay, anything else? If not, I'm gonna entertain a motion that we close.
So moved.
Or adjourn.
Second.
Wait, who made the motion? Did you make the motion? I don't, Jesse made the motion. Did you make the second? Tony made the second. All in favor, say aye. Richard made the third. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now, Councilman Hoheisel, if you could go to the state and advocate against daylight savings time.
I like to play golf late.
And while we're at it,
I do too.